folks, welcome to the Cabin Fly Shop and our continuing series on tying Great Lakes patterns, both historical and modern. This particular pattern that we're going to do today is a swing fly in a very different style. It has some intruder qualities. We're using an intruder hook. We're connecting it, with a tube on a shank. All of those things sounds familiar to you swing anglers that are swinging flies for steelhead using single or switch rods or two-handed rods. This particular pattern I've adapted from a friend of mine on the East Coast. A lot of you heard of him and have followed him. His name is Bob Popovic, and he is a superb fly tyer. Bob developed this technique, this style called hollow style. And it is, when you look at this fly in the vise, you think, oh my God, that looks horrible. Well, it's intended to look like this when it's dry. When this gets wet, this fly folds back like this and then pulses as it swims, quartering across the current. Bob uses it for making big flies. Some of his, what he calls flies, FLYE, are 6, 8, even 10 inches long, that he makes this tapering effect with the bucktail, which he always uses to build the body of this fly. So this fly is going to take a bit. Bear with us. There's a lot of steps to it. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to handling the bucktail and stacking it and so forth. But let's do it. Let's tie it. We call it the hollow swing fly. We're going to do it in olive and orange. First thing we're going to do is we're going to hook up this intruder hook with some backing. So we're going to go up through the eye and back down through the eye. I'm going to make my life a little simpler. I'm going to use a threader here, bobbin threader, and push that through the eye to draw that. I didn't pinch that down quite far enough. Not unusual for me. I said it was going to be simpler, right? There we go. Now it'll go through there. So, once you get that size to go through the hook that you're using, you can just simply draw this back through. Let me get my scissors to open this up. Seems cumbersome. It's acting kind of cumbersome right at the moment. Here we go. We're just going to pull that through. There we go. Okay. Now, we're going to take a piece of tube. I'm going to do the same thing, only this time we're going to put both of those through there. You know, you can do this in advance when you're tying a few of these up. That would have been far too simple. Besides, you wouldn't get the full effect of me fumbling with this stuff. Let me spread that. There we go. And that just goes over the eyes, like so. Okay, so there's our hook. We've got our tube mounted. This is 30-pound braided Dacron. We've done it in orange kind of to match the head of the fly. No big deal. Now we're going to take a shank. This shank we want to put into the vise. We want to leave about 1/8 of an inch in the vise, and I'll tell you why. Because the end of the, let me clamp that in there. The end of the tube is going to slide over the end of that. My vise is slipping on me there a little bit. The end of the tube is going to slide over the end of the shank. The next step is to attach the hook. So we're going to put the backing through the threader, just pull it through the eye of the fly. We're going to bring this up and we're going to start the attachment so that the end of the tube slides just onto, 1/8 of an inch or so onto the shank of this hook. So let's put down a base layer of thread. Stop right there. This is pretty straightforward. Make sure that your tube extends just up onto the hook there, about like so. And we're going to wrap down the shank. Through the eye and back along the shank of the hook. Next, we're going to add some adhesive, fast penetrating head cement. And now we'll start to build the fly. This is where the bucktail, we don't stack it, we just remove the shorter pieces out of the butts, make a nice square cut. The tips point forward, and we set it on the shank of the hook. We're going to go over it 2 or 3 times loosely and then allow the bucktail to spin around the shank of the hook, just like that. Leave those flared butts just like that, so that when we push this hair back, this is going to act as a flare bump. So push, push, jump the thread up in front, and we build a little dam here to give that hair the attitude of just starting to flare back. I'm going to push that towards the camera so that you can see how that is all the way around the shank of the hook and is very sparse. If it's too heavy, if it's too heavy, the fly won't breathe properly. And I found that to be true with a lot of materials. Bucktail, marabou, believe it or not. Lots of people think, well, more marabou the better. It really doesn't. It comes out like a mop and it doesn't breathe at all. Next is copper flashabou. I measured out so it's about the length of the hair. We're going to put some on the top, and then we'll just take the balance of this, sling it underneath, so we now have marabou on the bottom also. Trim that the length of the hair. We'll set that side as a reserve. And we're going to jump up and do another clump. I typically do 3 or 4 of these. We'll see what how I end up here. Set it just in front so that the butts of the material are pretty much right up against the material that we ended with here. So again, push down, flare it around the hook, and now flare. Push back. Jump up in front, build a thread dam. Now you can see how that's starting to develop in clumps. All working together to do this breathing action thing that is the essence of this particular fly. More Flashabou. The magic of olive and copper Flashabou is well known. I include it in all of my olive streamers. I use copper Flashabou or copper crystal flash. The two are magic together. Trim that off the bottom. This is coming along nicely. This is a fly that takes some time, but when you see the movement in the water, it's worth it. You also cry when you lose it in a tree or a log jam when you make a dumb cast. Not that I ever make dumb casts. I make them almost every other cast. Again, that's that flare bump with the butts of the material. Push it back. Bring the thread up front. So we're going to end up with 3 nice clumps here. Some Flashabou. Trim that. That's kind of some of the leftover Flashabou that I had from the trimming, so I'll just use this. I was tying commercially for Spirit River one time. I designed a bunch of flies and they were using them, and of course you have to be really accurate with materials and that sort of stuff because they send them out. You know, they go out to Sri Lanka or wherever they send them to offshore. And the fly manager, a fellow by the name of Ken Menard, and I was tying the fly for him. They were doing a little video so they could send it along with the material list and things. And I said, get a bunch of marabou. And he said, well, Ray, what's a bunch? He said, a bunch might be 4 to you or 5 to you, but doesn't mean anything. You have to be very specific. So if it was 3 pieces of crystal flash, we had to identify it as 3 pieces of crystal flash to satisfy the well, and then there was, there's money restraints too on that sort of stuff. So now we're going to put the head on this fly. We're going to do it in 2 clumps, one behind the eye, on the top, and on the bottom. And then we're going to jump up in front of the bead chain and we're going to do a push of dubbing right over the eye. So we're just going to take a clump of dubbing now and we're going to push it right over the eye so it encompasses the shank of the hook, and we're going to go around at 360 and then tighten so that we don't disrupt that material and have it come lopsided one way or the other. Now we're just going to do a few wraps, do our whip finish, pick out a little bit of the dubbing, do a little bit of a trim that's a little bit long. You can just shape it however you want. I'm gonna do the same on the bottom, just clip a little bit of that off. So we've got a nice orange flared dubbing head. Now we can come back and we can take the shank and push it into the tube. First I'm going to slide it down the tube here a little bit, and then onto the shank here, just like that. Slide it back up on there. And there is the bug. This technique allows you to, however you want this hook attitude. So there's the eye of the fly with the turned up fly. Let's say you want to have that hook in an up position. With the tube, you can just simply turn it up, turn it to the side, turn it down, however you want it. But it's really simple with the tube and the 30-pound backing to do that. And that is the hollow swing fly.